Parliamentary reporters dictation number 43 at the speed of 160 words per minute. Last 5 seconds. Ready? Be ready. Start. We choose this system of parliamentary democracy deliberately. We choose it not only because to some extent we had always thought on those lines previously, but because we thought it was in keeping with our own old traditions, not the old traditions as they were, but adjusted to the new conditions and new surroundings. We chose it also. Let us give credit where credit is due because we approved of its functioning in other countries, more especially the United Kingdom. So this parliament and the Lok Sabha became to some extent like the British Parliament and the British House of Commons in regard to our rules of procedure and methods of work. Parliamentary democracy demands many virtues. It demands, of course, ability, it demands a certain devotion to work, but it demands also a large measure of cooperation, of self-discipline, of restraint. It is obvious that a house like this cannot perform any function without a spirit of cooperation, without a large measure of restraint and self-discipline in each group. Parliamentary democracy is not something which can be created in a country by some magic wand. We know very well that there are not many countries in the world where it functions successfully. I think it may be said without any partiality that it has functioned with a very large measure of success in this country. Why? Not so much because we, the members of this house, are exemplars of wisdom, but I think because of the background in our country and because our people have the spirit of democracy in them. We have to remember what parliamentary democracy means more so in this time of change and ferment than in ordinary times. Even when the old order is good, it has to yield place to a new one, lest one good custom should corrupt the world. Change, there must be change, there has to be, particularly in a country like India, which was more or less changeless for a long time. Changeless not only because the dynamic aspect of the country was limited, restricted, and confined by foreign domination, but also because we had fallen into ruts of our own making in our minds, in our social framework, and the rest. So we had to take our souls out both from the ruts and from the disabilities and restrictions caused by alien rule. We had to make rapid changes in order to catch up, but while change is necessary, there is another quality that is also necessary, a measure of continuity. There has always to be a balancing of change and continuity in our democratic way of life. A person who is not dealing in an expert way with a specific subject will naturally go in for generalizations. I am not expert and so I can say many things about many subjects. Looking at this institute from a distance and looking at its publications, it seems to me that it has been making good progress. We have been told that similar institutes in other countries have begun to appreciate the work of this one. There can be no doubt about the importance of the work which you are called upon to do. I am glad that from a small annual business session, this gathering taking advantage of the presence of so many distinguished persons who have come here today will spread out into a conference on a specific subject matter, namely recruitment and training for the public services. I feel that this is something really solid and worthwhile. I am quite sure that it will bear results. It may be that the results are not very obvious, but it will in any case be an earnest discussion of subjects of high importance. I often wonder how we should approach these subjects. There are several possible approaches to them. The technician's approach, the professor's approach, and the man in the streets approach. I believe that most of you who have gathered here are either of the administrator type with actual experience or the professor type. Both types are very important, both having a fund of knowledge at their disposal. It may be said, however, that neither of these two types represents the man in the streets approach. I do not think the man in the streets approach is likely to be well informed or even very helpful. However, it is obviously an important approach because it is the man in the street or the man in the field who counts, because after all it is him that the administration is ultimately meant to serve. You must always remember that aspect. If you do not, you will have no solid ground under your feet. It is worthwhile to repeat this because the administration not only has to be good but has also to be felt to be good by the people affected. That should always be so, but it is necessary in a fully democratic setup because this is being fast developed not only in this country but in many others too. Now, what is self government? We have a parliament which is sovereign, which normally speaking is elected every 5 years. It is obvious that the vast majority of the measures considered and passed by Parliament are in a way being considered by the 360 million people in the country. If I may say so, the people's representatives tend to function on the basis of a feeling of the general pulse of the people. The latter have got the power to kick out a government or a member after a certain period of time, as it is important to keep the government or parliament in check. Again, there also exists a general feeling or awareness in the people that things are being done according to their wishes or in consultation with them. In fact, they have begun to feel that they are governing themselves. This is only partly true, but it is true enough in the sense that there is a check on the government and also on parliament, and that it can be kicked out if it went too far in any direction. Therefore, it behaves and tries to keep in line with public opinion. By and large, a parliament or a government does what is reasonable without really making a reference to the people, so long as it gives the impression that democracy has been preserved and that people are being consulted, that their wishes are being respected. All is well, but whether they are actually consulted or not is another matter. If they get the impression that things are being imposed upon them, then friction arises. Apart from doing his work, the administrator, whether he is low down or high up in the scale, must give the impression, even if it that impression is not 100% correct, that he is working through the public will and carrying it out. Of course, this cannot always be done. The administrator cannot carry out everybody's will, but he must give the broad impression that he is functioning in accordance with the public will, always thinking of public grievances, trying to remedy them, and consulting the people. Whether such an impression is created or not depends upon the manner in which the administrator functions. It is quite essential in a democracy to create this impression in the interest of both the public and the administrator. Otherwise, democracy rebels, perhaps not immediately but after a period of time. This applies generally to all types of administrative activities, but it applies more so to work of social character which affects the people at large in many ways. Here, an administrator who is doing an honest man's job and knows that he is doing his utmost often does not receive the recognition that is due to him. In fact, he meets with criticism and curse and feels irritated and hurt. An able administrator, however, will always do the right thing and also make the people feel that he reflects their wishes. The sensation must come to the people that he is reflecting their wishes to some extent. When a multitude of voices is advising the administrator or criticizing him, obviously he has to make his own choice and function according to his own decision. He cannot listen to or agree with each of the hundreds and thousands of voices which advise him, but by his manner of functioning, he should make them realize that he has given due consideration to what they said and that he has been courteous not only to them but to their thinking. That way, by and large, he will be able to satisfy each of them and some to some extent. In administration, as in most things in life, it is not only what one does but the manner of doing it that counts. It is exceedingly important in dealings with large masses of human beings. As in a democracy, I should like to stress this, especially because it is of the highest importance as much for the administrator as for the politician. The politician realizes this in the normal course because he would have to go if he did not realize it quickly enough. The administrator, however, can continue much longer without realizing it fully, but there will be ill feeling against him and he will not be able to do his work adequately because most of it now involves the active cooperation of masses of people. Stop.